Hi, everyone. It's with great pleasure that I announce today the kickoff of our Astra Fireside chat appointments, a series of short interviews with prominent VCs and startuppers from all around the world. Briefly about Astra Incubator. Astra is a 10-week startup incubation program targeting student founders and recent graduates in Italy. Astra just launched its first incubation batch last week and is currently incubating 20 startups, featuring speakers from some of the Italian biggest startups and VC firms. I'm Francesco, Berkeley graduate and product manager in a Silicon Valley startup. With me, Ileana Pirozzi, Stanford PhD with multiple experiences in venture investing. Ileana, would you like to introduce our guest?
Absolutely. Thank you, Francesco. So it is with great pleasure that we have Ian Taylor, partner at Pear VC, with us today. So Ian grew up in a West Village amongst forests and fields, and he really fell in love with the Bay Area while studying mechanical engineering at University of California, Berkeley. So he started off his career as a strategy consultant in the UK and then transitioned to venture capital, where he designed and launched a 2.5 billion fund of funds and led their investment strategy. So after that experience, he came back to the Bay Area for an MBA at Stanford University, where he met Pear and decided to start working with very early stage startups. So now at Pear, he heads Pear Dorm, which is a program with Pear that is specifically designed to support student founders from the earliest stages of innovation. So without further ado, it's my great pleasure to introduce Ian.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you, Ian. Thanks for joining us. So tell us a little bit about your story. What kind of child were you? How did your aspirations bring you to early stage ventures, and how did you end up in the US specifically?
Yeah. Well, thank you. No, people generally don't ask me about that, so I suppose it's nice to have an opportunity to share it. So I grew up in a small village in North Wales, as you pointed out. When I was a child, I suppose it wasn't all positives. I would say I was quite stubborn, as well as being very competitive. I was also very fascinated about the physical world, let's say, because I was in a small village surrounded by forests and agricultural land all around me. I just got really interested in how the world worked from a very physical point. As I'm sure many kids all the time, I think they get privileged to have access to these answers after seeking answers for so long. So yeah, that's kind of me as a small kid, really curious, probably a little bit stubborn and very competitive. And in terms of like my journey from being a child in Wales, beyond that, I got the opportunity to go to university, a place called Durham in Northern England when I was 18. My parents hadn't gone to university. My dad and mum have much more fascinating stories than I would say. My dad ran away to Australia when he was 15 years old. And my mum became a nurse when she was very young as well. And yeah, I think they had some really strong world experiences at the time when I was going to university. So went to university in Northern England, studied mechanical engineering, sating, I suppose, my curiosity to understand how the world worked from a very physical point of view. So at 19 years old, I got the opportunity to go to Berkeley. Obviously a very fascinating place, a great university, but also lots of diversity of thought. And that expanded my mind beyond just thinking about engineering. At that time, I had friends who actually became my friends for years afterwards, and I lived with in London, and they went in many different directions. Some of them started companies, others went into acting and other passions. And I think it expanded my mind to really think about what my mission was and what I want to do in life, beyond just getting good grades and kind of being good at soccer or whatever else was on my mind when I was younger. Years later, I came to live in London. I was doing strategy consulting. I think I was really drawn towards that because it helped me explore the world from a business point of view. When I was 20, 21, I didn't really understand all the different opportunities there could be in business. And I just saw it as a really good access to meeting CEOs and people who were running businesses, to learn about all these different models and ways that you could create value. A few years into that, I got the opportunity to join this fund of funds. and help launch a new fund of funds, working directly with the CEO. Through this process, I actually did quite a lot of research into the venture capital model in Europe in comparison to the US as well. For me, it was an excuse to study the industry from a very kind of, I suppose, macro perspective, understanding how capital flowed, but also very importantly, how ecosystems are grown in the UK, in Europe, and more broadly. So that was, yeah, a very fun 18 months. Got to know a lot of people and sate my curiosity. And during that time, I got the opportunity to come to GSB, where I started working on ideas myself and got to know the Pear team. I was what's called like a Pear fellow, which is like a scout. I was helping more their portfolio companies, working on some pricing model optimization. I was helping them do some diligence on more technical companies. And yeah, just immersing myself in the world of venture capital in Silicon Valley. And then after a few coffee chats with the managing partners, while I was still a student, they just offered me the job. It felt very different than all the formal kind of processes I've been through before to get a job in consulting, etc. It was just a conversation about kind of what was important to me and what I found exciting in the world of venture capital. So yeah, that's kind of my story to now, I guess.
That's very interesting, Ian. Thanks for explaining us and telling us a little bit about yourself. I'm very curious about, like you mentioned that you worked for both basically VCs in Europe and VCs in the US, right? Any notable differences? What are some of the challenges, for example, that encountered by entrepreneurs in each space? What are some of the advantages of doing entrepreneurship in Europe compared to the US? Because we don't want founders to believe, that the US is the only place where startups really happen.
Yeah, well, it's definitely not.
The case.
I mean, I think the European scene is definitely thriving now. It will continue to. Okay, so I think there's things that weigh on both sides. The places like Silicon Valley just have a heritage. And when I say heritage, it's not like just because there's famous companies or just because there's money there. It's like, it's the fact that you're surrounded by other people that have built companies before. So it's easier to find mentorship. And I think that was like a strong defensive moat around Silicon Valley for many years. But now with the internet and access to opportunity online, access to a lot of the kind of information that helps you get a company off the ground quicker through programs like this, that is opening up access to information to understand how to build a company in best practice and where to focus your attention in the early days. I think that opportunities open up a lot more. The barriers are much lower now. So that's always been the main positive, I think, actually, about Silicon Valley, is just the density of people that have worked on companies before and can help share their advice and best practice. I think the positives about Europe is the diversity of thought. I think building a company is all about, first of all, identifying problems to solve. And that requires people who have lots of different experiences to understand what all these different potentially valuable problems to solve are. And Europe is, I mean, it's multicultural, there's different languages, there's different ways of life. And through that comes understanding of different problems that can be solved. So that's a big plus point for Europe. And obviously the lifestyle as well. I definitely miss Europe a lot for the lifestyle. One other point I should point out actually is access to talent. There's undoubtedly incredible talent in Europe. And I think if I was to build a company in Europe or the US, it would be much easier to find talented people to build that company in Europe. So I think that's a big asset that is underutilized today.
We definitely agree, Ian. And part of what we're trying to do is, like you said, we're also fascinated with understanding how ecosystems are grown. So that's what we're hoping to do here. But I'm hoping to find out a little more about how this fascination with early stage startups began. And to dig a little bit deeper, for the audience, what's special about Pear is that their tagline is, we work with entrepreneurs from day zero. So why, Ian, is Pear's investment strategy so centered around student founders? Because, of course, student founders are often first-time founders, so that there's some inherent risk there. And many people even say, that at such early stages, you're investing in the team rather than the idea. So do you agree or disagree with that? And at such early stages, how do you even balance encouraging the entrepreneurs to pivot or keep an open mind about their idea versus persevering to fulfill their vision?
Lots of questions in one. I'll take them one by one. So the focus on the students, I'll take first of all. So if you look historically back at many great companies, they've been formed in either university labs or by people who are students or recent students. So I think there's something that comes with the time at university and the access to other people who are very smart and maybe haven't been told how the world should be yet and can maybe imagine what the future can be. It's just a special, unique point in time where you have access to professors, your classmates, and time to think, as well as this freedom of thought to dream a different future. So yeah, that's one of the reasons I think a lot of great companies come out of universities. And yes, around half of our investments are into students or recent graduates. We also partner with veteran founders or people that might have been in industry for a number of years as well. But we do think students are very special. Coming on to the other point around just partnering with people at this earliest stage. So we call it 0 to 1 in terms of going from 0 to Series A. So Series A is almost like you've got this big company in mini form. And before that point, it's mostly a set of experiments to kind of figure out what that company is. Very focused on your customer, very focused on learning what their problems are, and then building solutions around that, and then figuring out business model, go to market, and all those other elements to build a viable, large scalable business. So I find this stage really interesting because in a few months, you can go from someone's idea to a real company, and they're starting to hire, they're starting to create value, and things are just changing so quickly. So I think the trajectory of change is what excites me, as well as the puzzle of solving those problems, of pulling all these different elements together, listening to customers. It's not really about crunching large data sets or kind of like executing at large scale. It's more about like really trying to listen to people. It's very human, I would say, the early stage. It's about people, both on the customer side, bringing in the first people into your team, and then also listening to founders and trying to really understand them. I also feel at the early stage, there's opportunity for me to be helpful. I think the meaning I get out of this work is not just like, obviously the outcomes are great in several years' time, we've created all this value, but it's the day-to-day of building meaningful relationships and feeling like I really do help people. Yeah. The other questions, just remind me.
Yeah, sorry. I realized that was quite loaded, but we were thinking, at such early stages, how do you balance encouraging entrepreneurs to pivot and keeping an open mind about their ideas versus, you got what it takes. It's a great idea, go fulfill it. Yeah.
I think, okay, there's almost like there's different elements to this. So overall, I always suggest whatever I say is just a data point. Ideally, the founder knows their market and their problem than I ever would, because they should be a student of that market, of that problem. I might have seen patterns before, I might have other information through companies or research I've done, but I'm just providing them more data for them to make decisions. So I never tell or really strongly advise anyone to do anything. I just share what I've seen before and try and draw on people that are experts in markets more than I. So that's one element. The kind of the type of advice I might give in terms of a business or a problem they're focused on often is that, well, the way that we see the world is we're looking for really big companies need big markets, and kind of follow that line of thinking and just do a bottoms up market sizing to figure out, is it potentially a really big company from a customer and price point of view? And then just have an open question about, is that what they want to do? Like, not everyone wants to build a big public company. It's not the fit for them. Maybe they just want to solve a smaller problem that they really care about. So I think just being open about that kind of thinking and not forcing anyone down a route they don't want to go down. Yeah.
Thank you, Ian. Now to a more, let's say, technical question, right? A lot of time I get asked, about the differences between pre-seed, seed, and Series A in terms of, stage of the company, investment sizes. Can you tell us, and the people that are part of the Astra incubation program, can you tell us a little bit about the difference in investment sizes, stages of the company, and what you're looking for usually in Pear?
Yeah, sure. It differs a little bit by the market, I would say, but I'll give a general way that we see the world. So if we take pre-seed, this is typically like idea stage. You might have an MVP and you might have like a first iteration of some customer interaction, but it's an idea and there's a compelling, and then the other part of it is, does this founding team have like an insights into this problem? What makes them special to solve it? Is there like founder market fit? I think what's really compelling in this element is where you're listening to the founder and they're explaining how they've been speaking to all these customers, how they've been testing hypotheses, how they have a very open mind and they're iterating. It's not like a fixed solution. They're very focused on the problem and the customer and they're iterating towards it. So that's generally like pre-seed stage. Strong founding team, clear fit, compelling articulated idea in a big market. Seed stage, what we're looking for is what we call customer love or product love. So this is clear where you're not just pushing your product out into the market and trying to get people to take it. It's where you've kind of gone over the hurdle and you're starting to roll down the hill, where the market is starting to pull the product from you. You're starting to just get traction without putting lots more effort in, and you're starting to feel that customers really love your product. What it takes to actually measure that kind of product love really depends on the types of business. So for a consumer, you might be looking at like retention, engagement. Other types of businesses, you'll look at different metrics. And then Series A, as I was saying before, is where you've got to a really big company in mini form. So you've figured out the product, what it is, people really like it, but you've started to build scalable infrastructure around that. It's not just the founder that's doing the selling. You're not just like hustling super hard to get customers. You figured out playbooks that you can hire a team, can go and execute. So that's like the point at Series A, is where this company is now ready for lots more capital to be poured onto it, for it to expand much bigger in this very formulaic way. Yeah. Cool.
Thank you, Ian. So I have sort of a spontaneous question. You speak a lot about hypothesis testing and experiments. It sounds like very scientific language, but ironically, venture capital is often known as a little bit of a field that can shy away from some of those deep tech or historically scientific startups. So in other words, VC is not always the right route for everyone. It's not the right route for every company. So what would you say to young student founders in terms of how do they know if they're a good fit for VC funding routes, or how do they even think about that?
Yeah, I think, okay, so I think deep tech, maybe certain people working in deep tech feel or think that VCs aren't interested in them because it's deep tech. It might actually be because it's technology without a clear focus on a problem. I think the way that we like to think about the world is in terms of customers and problems to be solved, opposed to specifically around technology to achieve that. Technology is the tool to achieve that. And there might be like a compelling why now because of new technology, but technology over time is generally commoditized. That obviously you can have IP around your technology, you can have like data flywheels that keep you ahead of other people. But ideally, if you're focused on the problems and the customers, your business is much more sustainable. So that's like a mindset thing around kind of technology, deep tech. I'm very open to invest into biotech, deep tech companies, companies that will need a lot of capital in the future. We just got to figure out two things. One is that it is really a big market. And the other thing is this founder someone we want to back and is going to be at it for the long term? Yeah, that's the way I would think about it. Sometimes we work with companies early on that might need a lot of capital later. And the work we do early on is to help them figure out what market they're going after, what problem they're really solving, and start to articulate that big company story so that then they can go out to a Series A investor and raise 10, 20 million, whatever they need to start getting their company off the ground.
Thanks, Ian. Last question. We've kept it like for long. What is your best piece of advice for an inspiring entrepreneur in their 20s in Italy?
In Italy, yeah, I think one part of it is there's access to so much information right now through programs like this, through just the internet in general. There's no excuse anymore, let's say, to kind of just try it, to get your company off the ground, to try and solve problems. Feeling so far away from maybe like tech hubs around the world, it really doesn't matter anymore. There's like very little barrier now in terms of being able to build a company. It's a state of mind rather than access anymore. That's really what's changed. I think it's so exciting. And I think I didn't realize that until I suppose into my later 20s, but I think once I did, I felt very free to do whatever I wanted to do. So yeah, I think just taking confidence in, you don't need to come from Silicon Valley or be in a tech hub to create something from nothing. You can do it wherever you want to do it nowadays.
Well, thank you very much, Ian. That was very, very inspirational. And I thank you very much for the great chat. So it was a pleasure, of course, to have you here with us for our first fireside chat for Astra Incubator. This is for today, so we'll have other great hosts in our next appointments, and stay tuned.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you all. See you.
Thank you, Ian.